we're good to go. We can just start talking pretty much whenever.
So I don't like pull cards a lot, but I pulled a card this morning just for whatever reason.
And I saw this. I was about to ask.
It called to me, and I pulled an interesting card. So I'm gonna have you pull a card and just kind of see how it works. I'll just like shuffle the deck, do the thing, cut it, whatever you like.
Yeah.
Card.
What is yours say?
I pulled an alliance card, which talked about like leveraging your relationships and building new ones, and I thought that was really timely. I'm really about like universal timing and like nothing's for a chance, you know, that kind of just
reaction. What do you mean? Can you do a reading for me?
Reaction. That's a pretty card. Earthly meaning. Denial, numbness, or misplacement have compounded unresolved emotions. An emotional reaction may have knocked things off balance beneath the surface. Things may have been off balance for some time. Uncomfortable emotions are powerful signals. Respond with compassion, careful consideration, and awareness. Limiting emotions restrict access to truth. The person who can feel positive emotions does not recognize a villain. A person who only feels anger cannot accept love. Spiritual meaning. Observe your emotions and consider what they're signaling. To a large extent, you can react and respond to life and how you perceive it to be. Step away for a while. Clarity requires balance and detachment. Let love be the catalyst for an enlightened outcome. Accepting your emotional self leads to being calm, composed, and blessed in every solution. Insight. Water reacts to cold and heat by changing form. The seed reacts to the presence of water, oxygen, and the right temperature by germinating. Plants react to light. Vinegar reacts to baking soda. Iron reacts to oxygen. Some reactions are instant and some are slow, but they are natural and predictable. Human reactions are much the same. Inhaling pepper makes you sneeze. Peeling onions will make you cry. A baby responds to hunger by crying. Being threatened will trigger a fight or flight or freeze response. Sadness, anger, and fear are innate responses to emotional, mental, and physical hurt. As children, we express those feelings as signals for help, love, comfort, or nurture. The capacity to interpret our emotional reactions with awareness is a distinct human trait. Not responding to your world is not possible. Expecting to manage, control, or deny innate reactions out of existence is like continually turning up the heat and being surprised when the water boils.
Jeez, the universe is coming for me today, for my throat. I needed to hear that, to be honest.
Yeah, I pulled the alliance and I was like, well, that's timely for like the day.
Yeah, it makes sense, and actually this is very timely for the past couple days for me.
Yeah.
I kind of love having, and I don't know if we'll get into like, I want to get into really spiritual stuff talk with you. But I kind of like reaction moments now because they're rare, and so when they happen, I'm like, there's more to unlock, you know? Yeah. So thank you for that, I appreciate it. So the reason I asked you to do the podcast, well, I guess I've been kind of like curious about this for a while. Every single time I talk to someone about like kind of coming back to Tucson, almost every single time, like realistically, I'm not exaggerating. I'll be talking about something, and they'll be like, you know Chris Gartrell? And I'm like, I know who he is, and they'll be like, you guys are exactly the same, right? They'll say like, he talks about a lot of stuff that you do, or just, I think just in general, we have like similar energy. Then your wife said that to me whenever I went into the gym that one day. She was like, yeah, you and Chris are like exactly the same. And so I don't know why, right? And so I think it's your energy. You have very like balanced masculine, feminine energy of like you can like make people feel really comfortable around you, and I think that's really rare for a male coach, and I think that's what's helped me a lot in the fitness industry and going into holistic coaching is just having a more open space, I guess, non-judgmental space, and being able to create that for people. But obviously, like, and I don't know how much you know about me, right? But we'll get into it as well, any questions you have. But as I've gone into more of the spiritual stuff, it's just been kind of natural, right? Because it's exactly what I have done to heal myself, and I continue to do. So I want to know kind of from the start, really, where you started. I know you started in CrossFit and competing and all that kind of stuff, and that mentality and like that endurance sport kind of energy is so different to me than for like what you are now, even though you still, I'm sure, identify with that a little bit. I just want to know kind of how, like, if you could, like a quick pitch of like who are you and
origin story.
Kind of get into how origin story for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So I moved back to Tucson. I ran track in college, did the whole thing.
So you're from here originally?
Yeah, pretty much. Moved around when I was a kid, settled in Tucson, I think like 10. So pretty much here, raised like 4 more years. went to LA, did college, got out of college, kind of looking for something to do, like trying to compete. I was working in like personal training, was like a performance coach for like kids in Newport. It's a fun job, like interning kind of thing.
Did you know that's what you went to school for? Like
yeah, I kinesiology, that whole thing. You know, it was like do that or be a PE coach, right? Or like a master's or something. Like figure it out. What are you gonna do? Times have changed. So did that. Found CrossFit in like 2009. I saw like a DVD. And it was like this competitive exercise. I'm like, dope, just got out of college, still fit, I'm gonna go win this thing. Yeah. Right, stupid.
What year did CrossFit like really start to pop up?
I think like 2007 was probably like the thing. I don't know how long the website's been up, but I think 2007.
Because that's like pretty early. Like my first ever gym that I joined was a CrossFit gym.
Really?
CrossFit Northwest, I remember.
Okay, yeah. Gym Walker and stuff.
That was my first gym, and I got injured a lot.
Yeah.
So,
we'll get to that too.
But basically, at the time, it was like CrossFit is just popular. Sure. So that was like 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Kind of around the same time.
So I started then, moved back here, 2011, 2012. Was like thick into CrossFit. Like we did the competing thing. Like arguably like very like elite athletes for the sport. Like definitely the most competitive space in Southern Arizona for a really long time. 2012 to 2017, like we did it really hard. Towards the end of that, I was definitely feeling like I should stop doing this for some reason. It just like kind of wasn't there. Obviously, we had kind of some stuff happen in between. You know, we lost a friend. She was a big part of all that. Kind of didn't feel the same, right? Yeah. And I felt like I had to step away.
Such a huge part of it too.
Right. And like my identity is super tied into that kind of thing. So I had a hard time stepping away because it's like, what am I if I'm not this? Yeah. Fast forward like maybe a year, 2018. End of 18, early 19, I think, I had a pretty bad back injury. I was just not hanging it up. Got hurt doing CrossFit. And that I herniated disc, L4, L5, and a bulge at L5S1. So like a good one, right? A fun one. And that really forced me to like reevaluate my view on like what is health? Like what is health? Like what is the whole thing? Like what the fuck are we doing here? Like what am I doing here? Like clearly I'm not healthy. Like I look healthy. Right, but like, what is health?
But actually? I feel like shit. Yeah.
So like, that's probably the closest, or I was probably very depressed in that time because I'm not working out. I have no expression of like my identity. I felt like probably further away from like myself and my community. I felt like alone in my community because I wasn't doing these things.
And you're grieving too.
Sure, interesting with loss and all that stuff, right? Learning to grieve something that doesn't make sense, particularly to grieve, and that's where like kind of all that started, right? It's kind of like, who am I? Like, who am I without this thing? So that certainly started there. And as you look at like the CrossFit model, like I really dove into it and like, it's not a bad thing. Like no fitness is bad, right? Anything that gets anybody moving is great. Like continue to do it. Go 5 days a week, whatever. Yeah. Right? But like when we look at like long-term health, like intensity does not work. Like CrossFit is an intensity-driven model. It's super fun. That's why everybody likes it.
And the other, like if it was intensity and other things mattered, it'd be different.
Right, but like it's just intensity. It's like how heavy you're gonna lift today, how fast you're gonna go, how many you're gonna do, and like that stuff is cool. But like if you look at like the arc, 2 years, everybody gets hurt. Yeah. 2 years you plateau, you start getting hurt, and they have to start doing like individual programming. And we have competitive athletes, and we've always done individual programming for competitive athletes because you gotta work on shit. You can't go as hard as you can every day. Yeah. Right, just doesn't work that way. So we really started to like shift gears. Like I was lucky enough to be a strength coach in college, like right after I got out, and so I had some exposure, like some traditional, like I had a good mentor that taught like some basics, and I was lucky enough to go to some other coaching credential stuff like after I got into CrossFit, and they preached a whole different ideology than most CrossFit coaches do. Yeah. And I got to learn a lot. I had some really good mentors along the way that really like even we approach like the competitive CrossFit athletes the same way. Yeah. Right? Like we have to build them up through intensity. Everything should undulate. Like you can't try as hard as you can all the time because you're gonna get hurt. And we really moved that into our community. So like 2019-ish, I probably like shifted everything. Like we're gonna do this like way different now. Yeah. Like the whole year is planned. We know what we're doing. There's like progressive deloads throughout the year. Every summer we like take everybody off the barbell and we're doing like single arm, single leg stuff, rotational work, like range of motion stuff, like take your fucking shoes off, like things like that. Yeah. And we do it for 2 months out of the year, every year. Yeah. You know, and like people don't get hurt. And like we lift heavy, so like that does happen sometimes. It's unavoidable, unfortunately, right? But you know, it's maybe 1 or 2 people a year that happens. And then we manage it, right? We teach them that like why this happened. You know, like what are we doing outside of this? Fitness
most of the time it is outside.
Right, fitness is great, right? But it's 1 hour a day, and you might get someone 5 days a week, so like 5 hours a day, 5 hours a week, right? You're like getting healthy, but the other 23 hours of the day, they're trying to do everything they can to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Like everything possible, right? And they're just not aware of like all the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Right, there's tons of stuff. The gym is like you just kind of show up, right? And then you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right, and that goes in the
If
bank.
I miss the gym, but it's not a big deal. But if I miss all my other practices, it's like, fuck, I'm out of balance.
Did you
for
drink
sure.
water today?
Yeah, I'm like, did I meditate today? That's gonna be a huge,
Whatever,
like
right?
for me, it's like a huge one.
Yeah.
So in your own fitness, so that's like obviously the gym has kind of like shifted, and you've shifted training since you program everything. But in your own fitness, so you had the back injury, and then how did you go into healing that? Like, how did that? And how old were you whenever this happened originally?
So 2018, what is it? 2024 now. So like 6 years ago, it was like right after 30. Like
Okay.
31 maybe.
So that's what I was gonna say is that kind of Saturn return time, like 28 to 31 is like that. Those questions of like, who am I? Like something happens to really fuck with your identity, or like if I'm not this, and what am I? You know, that's when that kind of stuff starts to come up. And I've been there, done that.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely just like pouted for a while.
Yeah.
And like my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was like helping me out of bed because I was fucked up. Like it was a bad one. And I like did like I think like Marcus Philly had just come out with like the functional bodybuilding program.
Yeah.
So, like, I did a
it's
little
funny
bit.
because he's like the only other person that calls his stuff the same as mine.
Functional bodybuilding, yeah.
It's like his program, not like his actual brand. So that's funny that
His is just like CrossFit Light. Like it's still called CrossFit.
I like it is. He does a lot of things that he has like a very unique blend.
Sure.
And I think like it's still like I have a very unique blend, but his is like very different. It's like CrossFit / bodybuilding / knees over toes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's good stuff. He's got good stuff. But I did that for a little bit just to get moving. And then I reached out to I did like a regular PT in town for a while, and it just like wasn't hitting, you know what I mean? Like I would go in, do the thing, and I'm like, all right, like, well, what am I doing outside of here? Like, what do I have to do to start moving again? And it's just like, no knock on that, like it's just outside of the scope, you know what I mean? There's something more that needs to be done, and there's like bridges from that, you know, there's obviously a physical therapist, like I'm not that, people should go to that because they're experts in that field, and then when you leave there is a bridge between like them and me. I'm not a PT, right? But there's somebody in between that. So I reached out to the Active Life RX company, and they had like kind of just started popping then, and they just did like PT for CrossFit athletes, right? So I reached out to them. I got plugged to this dude named Larry. He's like Larry the Human on Instagram, and he's rad. He was like this super kind of spiritual dude, like shoes off all the time, and like had me doing some stuff that I thought was fucking stupid, and I wasn't into it, but I did it for 6 months. Yeah. Like religiously, 3 days a week. It was like nothing in comparison to what I like thought fitness was at the time. And he helped change like my idea on health quite a bit. And yeah, I was just doing like actual like quote unquote like functional stuff, like some things that were like gonna heal my body. And it was just like not intensely driven. It's just like, how do you feel today? Like how do you feel this week? And that was a big aid in me like moving through that injury. I didn't get surgery. I didn't do cortisone shots. I did nothing. And I just like let my body like work it out. And it took a little while, and then I got to some space where I was really strong, and like it was a funny one, and a funny injury happened. So we bought a gym in 2020, ran it for like a year and a half. Didn't really go.
You bought it in 2020?
We bought it in 2020 during COVID,
Like,
right in the middle.
Okay.
It was so silly, but we did it.
It was probably a good deal.
Yeah, it was a great deal for sure. Bought it. Didn't necessarily like it. Wasn't doing bad, but I didn't scale it well. Like it's kind of it was poor leadership on my part. Like, how do we do this? And I didn't give it any thought. I just like plugged the people in. The staff was stretched. It was hard, right? I didn't bring on anybody. It was just a little tough. That gym closed. We made the decision to close. It just didn't work out. Like lease-wise, they wanted a long one. We wanted a short one. Didn't work out. Yeah. And no joke. The day after we closed that gym, I couldn't do a squat. Like my left knee was just like yeet. And I'm like, what happened? Like we did a cool, fun, going away workout. I was killing it. I felt great. Woke up the next day, couldn't do a squat. And I was like, what happened? So like I kind of went through that for a little while, reached out to a buddy of mine that I know very well that used to compete back in CrossFit, super smart CrossFit style PT dude. He's been super helpful with me just in my journey since that point. And it took me 6 months to realize that I had like tons of like emotions wrapped up in failing in that business, right? And there's no like correlation isn't causation, but like the gym closed, I couldn't do a squat. And like legit could not do a squat for like 6 months. Like, and I'm like a squatter. It's like what I've done my whole life, right? Super strong dude, particularly, and like, it was tough. So again, like met someone else who's kind of like helped me move through like my journey in fitness, right? And like I've been like, really lucky to have like a lot of good like mentors like checking in on me on the way that I didn't know were going to become mentors.
Yeah.
And you just like kind of learn by doing in that space, right? And it shifts, like you're like, oh wow, like this is like opening my eyes to like what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? And just kind of taking a little bit of all of it, like nothing's original. Like we don't like all we borrow from people. And like my biggest pet peeve in fitness is when people talk about like I developed this thing. Like you didn't, you borrowed it.
You didn't. And there's still also like every single day you can discover something new.
Something new,
like,
right?
There's literally we're like at the very beginning. Like even when it comes to CrossFit, it's like CrossFit really isn't going to be something that people talk about. And now that things are kind of shifting, they might name it something else, right? Like call it something else. Yeah. But just the way that it was being done, and even with like the bodybuilding community, I tell people all the time, like we're kind of the guinea pigs of like pre-workouts and all this shit that we're taking, and then training our bodies this way, and also social media, right? Like living in comparison, all those things are impacting the way that we're feeling every day. And with CrossFit, it's like you're kind of the first guinea pig of like, you know, you were lucky to find people that had experienced it before, and like also that were, you know, doing that type of training where they understood the movement patterns and the lack of movement patterns and everything like that could help you. But now I'm starting to see why people say that we're really similar. It sounds like very similar to my story as well.
And the CrossFit like got to like kind of piggyback off bodybuilding, like people looking for something different after bodybuilding, right? Like Ronnie and all that stuff, like peak of it all, like early 2000s, like late 90s, right? Yeah. And then people started doing some like thing for a time that was really intense, and it was fast because bodybuilding takes a long time. We're in there, we're grinding.
That's what I wrote down to ask too. So this is a part that's really interesting to me because the entire persona changes, right? Because like I posted a video yesterday saying the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Do you have an owl in the middle of your tattoo right there? Hell yeah, dude, that's my fucking symbol right there. That's like my spiritual sign right now. I like locked eyes with it. But with CrossFit, the way that you're training, the way that you're being validated, everything about it, right, is like this hard, intense, fast, go mentality, right? And so it feels fast and it gets you high. Like people don't you're high as fuck. Like you're like literally just shooting your body with good feeling, you know, endorphins and everything that comes with it, even outside of that time. And so what was that like mentally, right? To like go from I'm going fast every day and then I can't fucking move I can't squat, I can't do something that to me is simple. And then as like a second question to that, was it surprising to you? Because I think that's a huge thing is when people say they have back pain, you don't know what the fuck that feels like until you're like really there and it's like, oh shit, it's not like you're sore. It's not like you're like, oh yeah, my back was I felt some tightness on my back when I got up this morning, so I deadlifted yesterday. No, like you literally physically cannot move. So yeah, was that surprising? And so like how did the mental really like I'm sure it was kind of like, yo, slow the fuck down.
I think answer the first question, like there was a big epiphany in all of that, and it came later, but kind of like fast forward to backtrack, like I discovered like what it's like not going fast every day, that thing. I didn't really like to go fast every day. I like people to tell me how fast I went.
Okay.
Like there's that thing, right? There's the instant gratification, right? Like kind of just doing it because everybody tells you you're good at it.
Yeah.
So you just like fit in that like, oh, square hole, square peg, I'll just go right there, right? You just kind of fit in it and keep doing it. And so like I'm just getting like the good boy like every day, right? Like you lift heavy, you run fast, you do the thing, right? It has nothing to do about the journey, particularly. Like
you're just that guy.
Yeah, just being that guy right now. That's fitting into where I was. Like I ran track in college and did the thing, and just keep like leveraging what I'm like good at already, right? And like that kind of brings out the idea like, if it's not hard for you to do, is it growing, right? Like the grind thing.
I literally wrote that down because you posted this. You posted this on your Instagram, and it was like, if it's not the hardest thing in your, what was it? Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what it was. Like it just really.
It was like if a hard workout is the hardest part of your day, isn't the hardest part of your day anymore. Then like, are you actually doing?
Are you doing something hard? Yeah. Like people, that's like kind of my like big pet peeve in fitness right now is that people are like, oh, I'm gonna get up at 4:30, I'm gonna run the cold, I'm gonna do the cold lunge.
You've done it like every day.
You've done it every day.
Yeah.
Right? But like where's like the growth space? Like where are you stretching? Like is something stretching you? Is something making you uncomfortable? Like that's uncomfortable. And like I picked up like hard things after that. Like I picked up cycling and got really good at it, and everybody's like, wow, that's amazing. But like I knew I would get good at it.
Yeah.
Like I knew I would, right? And you just kind of suffer a little bit, and like the physical realm is like uncomfortable, but like it was comfortable for me.
Yeah. It's what you spend most time.
Yeah, you just go find some validation in that space. But there's other spaces that I need to stretch. Like maybe I should learn how to scale a business. Yeah. Right, but that's super uncomfortable because I'm not good at it. Yeah. I fail at it. And all that stuff, right? So yeah, I learned of like what that was actually like, what that hit actually was. It's a drug,
Yeah.
I was actually just like using drugs.
Yeah.
I'm a dry drunk. That's what people talk about, right?
Yeah.
But we're all addicts, right?
Yeah.
And I was just
you're just flipping it to the next thing.
I was just addicted to that thing.
Yeah, it's like
yeah. And it's a good one, right? There's something worse from it for sure. But that in and of itself, like kind of learning that like, yo, that's just like totally tied to your identity, and like you are that thing.
Yeah.
So that was really like shaking for me. What was the second question?
Second question was it let me actually restart this for you. The second one was, before we move on from this topic, something that a lot of the times this question can kind of bring me back to, like, this type of question can bring me back to my center, I guess you can say. So you said like I couldn't do the athlete thing, right? Like the athlete thing of like pushing through, and it's like, is that really what athletes do, right? Like that's something that I ask myself, right? Like, and sometimes when I ask these questions, people get like really defensive,
right?
Like, no, like ask yourself that, like, is that, like, what would Kobe do, right? What would, like, is it are you the best athlete if you just push through and nobody knows about your emotions, or are you a great athlete if you're like tapped into your psyche, right? And you're into your emotions and you're, aware of these things and you're also processing them and going through them, right? So like a lot of the times, our mentality of like the guy thing or the tough thing or the athlete thing or the gym owner thing to do or whatever, it's just a perspective in that time, right? And it's like, okay, well, what kind of athlete do you want to be, right? That there's a lot of different types. And so yeah, I just want to talk about that because
no,
it's a huge thing. It kind of goes back to like what you were just saying with like if it's the hardest thing of your day, is it actually, if it's not that hard, is it actually the hardest? You're doing the hard things, right? Because a lot of questions can be just like flipped like that immediately. Like people are like, I want to be strong. Okay, well, do you want to be strong and be in pain? No. All right, well then you can be strong. Let's just do it the way that you're gonna get there and not be in pain, right? So from that point on, so I'm sure there's like probably maybe the back injury and then the knee injury. I kind of had a similar story. I won't get too far into it, but like my shoulder kind of did the same thing as your knee, literally like COVID. I was running a gym in Nashville. We shut down. A tornado had just hit the city like a week before and like hit my girlfriend's house. We broke up. She moved back to Arizona because of it. So it was like tornado, gym shuts down. I've been trying to push social media for like months at work, and I'm the fitness director too, so I'm in charge of all these trainers. So all of a sudden it's like, all right, Tanya, that stuff you wanted to do on camera, like it's time to do it now, right? So it's like all this pressure, and in general, I just kind of put pressure on myself in my life, and it's just kind of a reoccurring pattern, right? So same thing happened to me, and then it was the same situation where I kept kind of seeing a little bit of change, but then it just came down to, whoa, there's a lot more mental here kind of wrapped all in it, and I really couldn't move. Like I couldn't work out, I couldn't move. I really like my brain fog was so intense. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't feel like I was awake. Like I was like kind of like awake for 5 minutes a day, just kind of in this like daze all day. Because I was so obsessed with it and so lost in it. And so that's what really drove me down into more like the mental healing, spiritual healing, more like spiritual, emotional, all that kind of stuff. So at what point like did that happen for you, right? Like, so it's like you're seeing a little bit of, did you kind of go right into it, or in the process had like spirit, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, at what point did it start to kind of like come into your life, or you started to recognize, hey, this is something deeper?
Certainly after, I mean, that's always been like a little bit of a play, like what is this thing to me, and like what does it mean to me, and what am I in this thing? And I've certainly been in the space
what the fuck is going on?
What the fuck is going on? Yeah. I think that's just like kind of like the ongoing thing, and like what this fits in, and really like, why am I doing this, and what are we actually doing? It's been more of like an evolving of that, like the perception and perspective of like what we're doing in the gym. Like what are we doing in the gym? Like squats are squats wherever you go, right? You can pay $165 at our gym or $10 at another gym, but like squats are the same everywhere you go. So I think that me really diving into like why I was actually doing this stuff, outside of like the validation when I didn't have it anymore, like why am I still here doing this thing? And like, I'm not actually in the fitness business. Like I'm in the relationship business, right? That's what we do, is we build relationships with people, right? Like walking in the gym, any gym, or like reaching out or, emailing somebody like, hey, I need help. It's the most vulnerable they'll ever be, up until that point, right? At that point. And then from there, like they're in your care and you're building a relationship with somebody, like from there, you're enrolling them in like possibilities and like hope and all these things. And it's your job to do that, right? Like people continue to come to the gym, not because like their squat is strong. They can get strong anywhere, way cheaper. They go there because the relationships and the container that we've built to like hold relationships.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to a friend, and we were talking just about the gym and you know what we're going to do in the future and like what it is right now, and kind of asking me like, she gave me the analogy of like the example of like a church. Like when you walk into church, the church, like an old one, right? It's the walls are like filled with prayers, right? And like what is prayer? It's like a hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
When people walk into the gym, they walk in and like they whisper their hopes. Like I hope to meet someone, I hope to lose weight, I hope to get strong, I hope to be whatever, I hope to be a world champion, whatever. But they're whispering that,
Yeah.
right? And like the walls are like filled with hope. And that's what those spaces are about. That's what
Yeah.
we're about. It's just like some degree, and maybe contextually that word doesn't like vibrate with somebody, but like that in and of itself,
Yeah.
you know, like we're there holding like hope for people like to be better or to be whatever. But like we have to build the relationship with them so that that can like come to fruition, right? And on whatever timeline. That's a different thing, right? Is it like 3 months or 3 years, like whatever that is. But like really attaching to like, I'm actually just here to build relationships. Like it's actually has nothing to do with like how heavy you squat or how well you squat.
Yeah.
You know, like that's relative to the goal.
Yeah. Dr. Kate Jones, her and her husband own the Source. It's like her bio on Instagram, and I always point it out, but it's I meet people like the intersection of who they were and who they are becoming, pretty much. And I kind of feel like that as a coach, that's like I'm really doing, right? Like it's like I have had my fair share of, I went too deep down the rabbit hole, and I'm like in La La Spirit Land for a couple months or something, and everything's like a sign, and everything's like I'm just going through my own experience, right? And so it has impacted the way that I speak to clients or my perspective, just the way I coach in general, the way I view it. And so I always realize whenever I have those moments, or even when I like start to get a little smarter, that's like why I need the panels.
Right.
I'll let it go by a second, just flip it. So once I started to like feel a little bit more confident, get a little smarter, it was like pushing things on my clients that I'm learning constantly. And it's like you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for your own validation of like learning it and having to feel smart and share it, right? And so that's just completely evolved for me as a coach over time. So that's I definitely resonate with that. I think that's what makes you a coach that's still in the business, right? Like it doesn't even have to be like you're a good coach, right? But like coaches don't last in the fitness industry, and I think that's like, it's crazy because people don't really realize that, especially now on social media. Like, you know, people are kind of going whatever direction. I try not to focus on what everybody else is doing, right? But when it comes to like just like even the local fitness industry, it's like, hey, there's only like a few people that you can say that like have known each other that are still doing this, right? 'Cause it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of personal growth. Because if you start to progress and you're not progressing in your life, then you can't still be a coach. You're taking on so much, and you know, learning how to show up and not make it something that's completely about you, right? So.
Yeah, and for a long time that gym was just about like me as a competitor and the other athletes there as competitors, and like this kind of like literally like I would write the gym programming around like what we were doing and what we needed to do, right? And that's like how CrossFit gyms usually work, right? Like the coaches do the programming mostly, or they should at least. And it's just kind of built at like where they're at and how they're competing and what they need to do, and that's fine, right? But it's for anybody but not for everybody type of thing, right? And there's just there's a better way to do things, like to get to a goal. Like the answer of any coach, like if someone walked in and like asked me a question, is like, is this possible, or this is my goal? And like the answer is always, it depends. Like it's never like, yes, this is possible, like for sure, but like, you know, there's tons of variables that we have to come into it. Like we have to like bring
the answer is always it depends.
Like it depends. It depends on how much you'll work. It depends on how injured you are, how patient you are, how your life works out. Like maybe something catastrophic happens in a year, and like that's not gonna it's gonna take longer. Like it always depends. Like it's never for sure. There's no right program. There's no right anything. It just depends.
Yeah. So you said your wife, right, Jackie, used to be a massage therapist, and then with your injury, you did all these different things. What was like the aha moment, that light bulb moment of something really shifting when it came to like just like pain going away, feeling comfortable getting into the gym again? Like it's kind of like a progressive thing, or just one bigger moment than the other ones?
It was definitely over time. It was like just like kind of the motion is lotions thing, and like being like really thoughtful about like progressing and like being like gentle with my body. You know what I mean? Like listening to it in that space, right? It's that like what would Kobe do? Like I'm gonna think about that like all week, right? But I was just like listening to myself and like trusting other people, like really trusting other people, like trusting the relationships that I was building, and just kind of allowing that to happen. I remember like the first like deadlift, like real deadlift I did. I think I have it on video on my phone somewhere. I'm like fucking crying because I'm scared. Not because like I'm happy that I'm deadlifting, but I'm scared I'm gonna get hurt again.
Yeah,
right?
that was the second part of the question too. Just like there's the first, it's like the getting rid of the pain, and then there's like that period of like I'm fucking
PTSD,
terrified. Yeah. And did you, whenever you're getting back into it, because that would happen to me, I'd feel good, go in the gym, set it back again, right? And something that I was doing as well, and I think I am kind of constantly pushing my clients on this, and I can get a little obnoxious about it sometimes, but I'm like, don't say I need this to happen right now, right? Like a lot of times I have clients that text me like, I need to lose this amount of weight in the next month, right? Like you don't need to do that. If you put that kind of like hold on it, or this kind of like timeline of it has to happen, if it doesn't happen, then everything's fucked. Usually that's where I feel like for me, the universe is like, okay, well, you think it's like you have to surrender. And that's the lesson in this, right? And so I kept going, oh, in a month I'm gonna be fine, right? In 2 weeks I'm gonna be fine. And that's what kept setting me back, was every time I would say it and it wouldn't happen, it was like this fear and this just like doubt, right? Doubt of myself, doubt of am I gonna be okay ever again? Do I have nerve damage? I like literally couldn't like grip this and like pick it up.
Right.
So it was a lot. So yeah, the fear, do you feel like that still kind of like sneaks in a little bit sometimes?
I think when maybe I do too much,
Yeah.
right? And like whatever that is, relative to the day and how much I slept, because my kid doesn't sleep and like all this stuff, right? Relative to the day, like I can walk out of the gym like, oh, that doesn't feel great. And you have like a little moment like, all right, we'll see what I feel like tomorrow when I wake up. It's like that stuff. But for the most part, I really like at this point in my life, I just like take what it gives. Like this is what it feels like today. And I always leave the gym knowing that I could do more. That's like my thing, right now, for me, at least in my health, my physical health, emotional health. It always lets me know that like you're progressing well and maybe there's a little bit more you can do, but like leave the gym knowing you have like a little bit left. Like you
don't have to fail.
Yeah.
This is, I'm gonna see if I can answer. Like this is like the main question that I wanted to ask you this whole time. Ever since I like kind of like even just like following you on Instagram, just like seeing you train, because the way that your body has changed, like physically, the look of it, obviously, like as we get older, our bodies are changed, right? The way that it's changed is very similar to the way my body has changed, right? And specifically when it comes to inflammation. Yeah. And so I'm curious to kind of bring this and bridge it into the spirit world, right? Okay. When it comes to dissolving the ego, right? Expanding, creating more space, right? So for me, there's sometimes when I'm like rolling out or doing mobility work, whatever, it almost feels like I could like literally like run my hand through my body at this point, right? And in the past, it was just like the only way that I can really describe it is like mass or density. And of course, there was more weight and mass on me, and maybe some of it was muscle, but in reality, now I realize it was not much of it was muscle, right? Like, you and I have very similar, like if you have your shirt off and you're working out, you're like shredded. You can see all of your muscles. There's a lot of activation of everything. My body's very similar that way, like where it's like, hey, yeah, I might not be the biggest, but like if I'm working out, you can like see everything working because I'm like dialed in. You know, it's like more like that, not just shredded like lean, right? But just like there's actual like intent. You can tell that we train intentionally, right? So how does that feel? Like, I guess, how does that feel for you in the process? Do you feel good in your body right now? Like, is there any desire whenever to like put on more weight? It's kind of everything that comes along with that question, right?
I think in general,
it's just like a very, you get what I'm trying to ask, kind of?
I got you. I think in general, everybody in fitness has body dysmorphia. Like in general, everybody's got a little bit of it. Everybody looks at things.
Well, yeah.
And it's like, it's just largely comparative. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when I say I'm not strong or something, or say I'm not jacked or like whatever, you say those things like, oh, you know, like I always make that joke. Like someone's like, dang, dude, you're lean. I'm like, oh no, man, I'm not that jacked. Because I'm comparing to a whatever version that like is the best in my mind, or like whomever I like. So
like whoever you're like shredded,
jacked, a bigger dude, like
dude,
pretty big
it's not
for
that
me.
You're not right now. Right?
I think
like,
the biggest I ever was like 175 pounds. So like never like big, right? But my body looks different now. But that body's like purpose was way different,
Yeah.
right, at that point in time. And like I joke about it all the time because we have like some young kids who want to compete now, and like, you know, we're guiding them, and everybody asks like, "Oh, you're gonna do it again?" And like the idea of that sounds awesome. Like it sounds so fun,
Yeah.
and I would love to be just like plucked and put right back into the peak of all of it.
Yeah.
But like my life now, I do not want to sacrifice a minute of the life I have now for that life there.
For sure.
Because like that was cool, but I was probably like largely unhappy outside of those things that I was doing. I like drank a ton and like ate really shitty food most of the time probably, and just like I wasn't healthy in that space, you know. And like I don't want to give up time with my daughter. I don't want to give up time with my wife that I don't like. We don't get a lot of it because we're both busy.
Yeah.
And like just in general, like some of the relationships and things that I'm doing, like I don't want to give up any of that time.
Yeah.
You know, so like yeah, like I look at it and like being like super jacked would be cool, but like what goes into that thing, like understanding at least at this point in my life, like what goes into all of that.
Yeah. And right now we glamorize it, right? Like it's like easy to go, oh yeah, I was jacked back then. But do you feel like in a way you were like, I guess now for me looking back, I thought I was really connected to my body, and I look back on it and I'm like, I don't really feel like I could feel like right now I feel like the intrinsic muscles in my core and like I could just kind of have way more proprioception, like just like
there was a ton of like lack of understanding through all
so even
of it,
though you were like
we were just like riding this wave, right? Like this wave of like fitness. We're in the right age and space and time, and we had the right group, and you're just kind of like riding that energy. We're just like stealing energy from each other as we move through it, you know? So like, I had no like understanding. That's why when I got hurt, I'm like, what do I do? Because I had no understanding outside of trying as hard as I can every day. Right. Like, and I had a coach, I had a very good coach, and, you know, we're still friends to this day, and a great mentor, and taught me how to coach. But like, even the way that CrossFit athletes train now is vastly different. I was talking to a buddy about it like a couple weekends ago, and he was like, dude, if like we were training like this, like we wouldn't feel like that. You know, if we were training like this now, we wouldn't feel like the way we do now. Right. And we were just like, literally like as heavy as you can every day, as fast as you can every day, like all of it, you know, it just was unintelligent. Right. And like the people who rise to the top in those training styles, it's just genetic. Like you're just a freak. Like you're like LeBron James gene pool in CrossFit, and you can just handle it all. And it has nothing to do, like we were eating like gummy bears every day. You know what I mean? Like we weren't like, it was crazy. I do too. I love no knock on gummy bears. I love gummy bears. But you know what I'm saying? Like we weren't like eating what we should, right? In that space, like fueling the thing. We were just like literally riding genetics on a lot of it, you know, and obviously there's lots of work that goes into good genetics and stuff like that. Like no knock on anybody's work process. We all worked very hard too. But like the people that rise to the top in that kind of setting, like you just kind of have something about it, right? So no, I'm vastly more connected to my body and like what I need, as opposed to just like kind of what I'm just kind of going through the motions, right? So, this is like what we should do right now.
Yeah, and I don't know, like sometimes I'm just constantly trying to find. I'm not trying to find. I can see like where everything merges, I guess, or feel it more than anything. So I'm really into like what really got me into a lot of my own healing was I had a really great massage therapist. I kind of had the same situation where I had like different mentors randomly come into my life. I have like two main mentors that have been like huge, but one of them, he's in his 50s. This book up there, The Biohacker.
Okay.
But his name is Stuart Breeding, and Stuart is just kind of like my Mr. Miyagi, I call him. Like he's literally like that's who he is, right? And he is a holistic performance is what he calls it. He still trains like small group fitness. He's done a ton of research into HIIT training and VMO maxes and stuff like that. With like just different types of research, and he's like studied every different religion and culture. He's in the military, he jumped out of airplanes, lots of combat, lots of trauma there. Yogi meditator, like he kind of brings everything together, and he's been just huge. So he helped me a lot, but then I had a massage therapist that was just great. And so we had a really cool relationship because a lot of my clients started going to him. So then I was like getting free massages. So I like was seeing him once a week. And so in the process, I was really curious and asking questions. And then he kind of like helped me understand a lot. And then I read a book called Anatomy Trains, which talks about like the fascial patterns in the body and a lot of massage technique in there. So I like got into all that kind of stuff. And so for me, a lot of spiritual healing, or you can call it spiritual, emotional, has come through me releasing a lot of fascial, like adhesions, knots, trigger points, whatever you want to call them, in my body. And so I just feel this correlation, I guess, between the inflammation in my body and my ego, right?
Mm.
So like whenever I have a lot of ego, everything feels a little puffier, right? And
Yeah,
so
makes sense. Yeah.
you're like the only person that I think maybe I can ask that question to, right? So that's what I'm kind of like have you made that correlation before? Do you like feel that, I guess, as far as like the lighter that you get in, like the lighter you feel in your body when it comes to like spirit, I guess, does it correlate with your body physically and how it feels?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like unequivocally, right? Like
Yeah.
you, it's a.
Like how would you
I
explain it?
understand that the ego in that space, but it's a. At least for me, it like manifests in the idea of like detaching from like this thing as like as me, right? This
Yeah.
thing, this like whatever. Like,
Detaching
I'm,
from anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
like I'm
becoming wave.
like
Yeah.
deadlifted today, right? Like the gym's deadlifting and like a test out. They did this
Yeah.
big block and we're testing out, and like my I went in that day and it's like, hey, I have to get this in right now. This is my time. And like, I'm going to walk away feeling great. Like I feel great today. And I lifted heavier than I have in a while, but like just detached completely from like the outcome of it. Like I'm just
Yeah.
doing this today and I'm just going to take what my body gives me today. And if
Yeah.
it's going to give me less, it's going to give me less, but I'm not going to just keep putting more on because of like, maybe I dreamt about, I thought about this number last night
Yeah.
because just the way my brain is wired, like, you know, I know this is coming and I want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And like, what am I if I don't do this? That's like the old thought
Yeah.
pattern. And then you just show up and you're warming up and you're doing whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing today. And just, yeah, what is my body allowing me today? Like that's what I get today. And I'm grateful
Yeah.
for that thing today. And it took me like some injuries to get to that space. But yeah, like if you're like this, right? And I want this, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do this, and you're forcing it. Like there's not a lot in life you can force in that
Yeah.
space, like next to nothing, right?
Yeah.
We can't force anything. We just take what we're given in that space and we're grateful, and you know, you make the most of those opportunities and grow and build. But yeah, like as I dissolve from like the outcome, like that's how it resonates with me, is that like I'm not this thing. Like if that didn't happen,
Yeah.
no one would think less of me, you
like
know?
dissolving from like the mask, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah, yeah.
necessarily an ego.
No,
It doesn't
yeah,
have to be
just
like a
it's
negative thing.
yeah, it's just like the outward expression that
The avatar,
that I
whatever it
yeah,
is.
right, that I decided to share with everybody that I
Yeah.
wanted to identify as.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, literally no one cares. Outside of me, right? No one
Yeah.
cares. Like if I didn't go in and like lift what I did yesterday, you know, no one's gonna like look at it or even ask me. And if I tell them an answer,
Yeah.
they're gonna be like, "Oh, cool, like dope."
Yeah.
You know, like no one cares, right? Just me. Like my ego makes more of that thing because I
Mhm.
want the good job. Like, whoa, dude. Like,
Yeah.
there's still a little bit of me that wants that, and that's okay because like the ego drives you. You know what I mean? It drives you to be successful in the things you're successful at. Like it never goes away.
Yeah.
But it's like having a conversation with it and knowing when it's talking and when like, you know, your
Having
higher
discernment. Yeah.
when your higher
For
self is
sure.
like present in that space, right?
Yeah.
And like a lot of my journey just in my life the last few years, like, especially since becoming a father, is just like, where's the higher self and like where's my ego? Like when
Yeah.
I'm interacting with my child, like my child doesn't give a shit about my shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She wants what she wants right now, and she needs what she wants right now. And like if I'm acting from ego, I'm just going to teach her to act from ego. Like even
Yeah.
in just the way my body feels, like when my energy's crazy, so is hers.
Yeah.
And when I like,
Vibrationally.
yeah, if I can just like, I see her like go,
Yeah.
right? So like it's up to me to govern that, right? I have to
Mhm.
do that, you know. And that's just been like a huge lesson as a whole, like kids in general. But yeah, like to kind of circle back, like just not being like the outcome of any of this thing. Like it's all a gift. Like all
Being
this,
detached
yeah.
from
Like the motion
anything.
motion is motion, and like whatever it is, whatever I'm doing that day, like it's a deposit like in my life
Yeah.
and like love and energy and whatever I get from whatever I personally get from this thing, right? I'm lucky to be here. Like happy to be here. And that's
Yeah.
like kind of like the mantra with a lot of it, right? And I say it just joking, like happy to be here, guys. But like I am. I'm just
Yeah.
happy to be here. I'm happy to be doing
Yeah.
this thing still at 10 years through all these
Like
injuries.
no matter what.
I'm like
Yeah.
having like it's like fun still.
Yeah.
Like this shit is still fun. It's
Yeah.
so fun. Like I would coach every single class every day
Yeah.
forever
Yeah.
if I could. Like I still like that at 10 years. Like we're bringing people on because I need to, because like I'm raising a family
Yeah.
and like I have to be somewhere else. Like I have to
Yeah.
do that.
But it's fun.
It's fucking
It is
hard.
fun.
Like but that's probably still a little bit of like the scratch. Like, oh, you're a good coach. And like, oh, you're so fun. It's a little bit of that
Yeah.
still, right? There's
Yeah.
like relinquishing that control
Yeah.
of the space. Like, oh, this is mine, but it's actually not mine. Like, it's not mine,
Yeah.
right? I was just like lucky enough to be the person to hold the container. Like I was there, right?
For sure.
And then, you know, I certainly worked very hard at it, but okay, even like the want to be there all the time, it's like FOMO, you know what I mean?
For
I
sure,
don't want to
yeah.
miss out on any of this
Yeah,
cool
I
stuff
want
that
everybody
happens.
to know that. Yeah,
I'm still the
I
owner.
wrote the program. Yeah, I'm still the owner.
Yeah, I'm still the owner. Constantly just evolving. I feel like for me, as like the variables in life like start to change, like
Yeah,
I have to be better about being less rigid in it. I'm like, no, I don't want to wake up at 4:30 or 5 or whatever
yeah,
it is, right? I'm actually love to wake up early, but yeah, it's that thing. It's like it's cold, it's dark. Like, what do I do? Like, it's just kind of the resistance. Like, we feel the resistance,
yeah,
and I'm like, and I know at this point in my life, in some of the work, that I have to like lean into the resistance and just go where it feels like icky, right?
yeah.
We move into that.
That was I got the word surrender tattooed on my chest
Yeah.
last year. That was kind of, and I saw a video on Instagram a couple days ago that was talking about that. It was like and I completely agree. It's much more resistance than it is that's in your way
Yeah.
than anything
Yeah.
else, right? Like, it's us resisting, feeling the emotion, going through it. Like, there's no avoiding it. You got to get through it. You know, even when you're healing, it's not like you just get to something and it's like, all right, cool, I got here, right? It's like you have to experience it and let it go, right? In order for that energy to move. And so, frequency is super interesting because, and the more I listen to other people talk about it, I'm getting better about explaining it in a way that I don't start to lose people really quickly. Like, that my whole goal with this, with pretty much everything, is how can I talk about the things that I know in a cool pop culture,
Right.
you know
How
what
do
I'm
you, how do
saying,
you
kind
bridge
of
the
way
gap?
to
Yeah.
where people, how to bridge the gap to where people understand what I'm saying and it's not just all woo woo vibes, right? And when it comes down to is like, we all understand music, right? Like, we all, it's the most universal type of language or energy being shared. Like, you no matter what, you can understand that dun 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 is going to be negative, darker, right? Versus like lighter and higher vibration, right? And it works the same way with our chakra system, right? We start at lower vibrations and go up. And so that's kind of what I feel like whenever you're saying the flute, like when you're playing it, it's like you're involving your breath, but then there's like this matching the frequency that you're playing to like how you're moving your breath, that just kind of turns into this like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like you're like, you know, healing and just kind of clearing out that space.
Well, start low to high, like I play low, and then as you move through it, like your breath connects more, and like it gets higher. Like even just like the flute angle itself, and like how we're sitting.
How many notes are on the flute? 6
on the ones that we play. So there's like traditional, like wood, like Native American flutes.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's 6 notes on them.
6 notes.
Yeah.
And so then there's like where you like blow into it, right? So, you know, I always kind of like find that correlation. I'm like, oh, it's like your chakra system kind of working up. So the past couple of years, I used to think, hey, I can't sing, right? Like, I can't sing. I've never had a rhythm, right? Thought I didn't. And so it's cool because I lived in Nashville for 4 years, and it's like, I'm kind of like fine signs and everything, but it's Music City. That's the name of it, right? So like, I ran a gym called Music City. Like, everything was Music City, like was tied to everything, right? And so our gym was also called Quantum, so quantum physics themed, and so everything that I was doing was like based off quantum physics and music. So a lot of those things started to make me just kind of tune in a little bit more, like just listening to more music being around. Like, your ears start to work better. You start to recognize different notes and stuff. And then as I started to get on camera, talking has always been something that I'm a talker, right? Like, if anybody describes me, they're gonna say Tanya talks, right? Like, I have ADHD. Growing up, I was always in trouble for talking at home, at school, no matter what. Like, I was talking all the time, and so I used to stutter a lot. And when I get out of balance, I stutter or mumble or can't get to my thoughts. And so I did door-to-door sales as well for a few years. So like, my speech and the way that I communicate has been such a huge thing that has been something I had to learn. I also, English is my second language. So there's been a lot of different factors. And so the past couple of years, people have been making comments about my voice, saying, hey, like on Instagram, people will respond and be like, not to be weird, but your voice is like really calming, or like it made me feel really good or something. And then I was in Nashville this summer, and a couple people were like, wait, there's some people I met were like, yo, your voice is kind of different, right? And so it's something I'm trying to lean into specifically with this, right? Because I think that is sort of my instrument, right? I think we all have something different. And for me, it's just like, okay, the way that I talk or the way that I'm delivering the message is something that has resonated with people and it works. So if I continue to just work on this craft, I think it can do a lot, right? And even simply the way that I'm saying, and not necessarily what I'm saying, but the way that I'm delivering that, and me understanding how to change my tone and not be kind of up here, right? And just kind of balance myself out has helped me understand everybody else as well. So it really does come down to just like everything is a frequency, right? And so I think it's really cool that you have that hobby. I know, so it's very unique. So
it's I definitely never saw myself like playing the flute in my life, even the way I do, or like sharing that. That's like a kind of like a vulnerable thing. Like you put yourself out to like, in my mind, to be judged like by better flute players or people who don't play the flute who think it sounds
by
bad,
better flute players. I thought you were gonna be like, people think it's like lame for me to play the flute. No, like, by better flute players.
I think that like when like people in positions like you or I, like I run a gym that I run, and people have known like kind of whatever stigmas like followed that gym, type of thing, and like when people in those spaces start to do things like that, start to share things like that, like it makes it okay for like someone else to have that hobby. Not that like people like that are the end all be all, but like we're community leaders, and like you have a broader community in that space, and I have like one over there, right down the street, and like like that type of thing, like talking about like what heals you in that space is super important, right? And you have like obligation almost to like just share that thing, right? To do that, and like that's the resistance. Like I don't want to share this because X, right? But that's really important.
Because it's vulnerable and it shows that I'm not perfect, right? That's social media. There's like a love-hate relationship. I think anybody who makes content can say that, right? Like it's like all these, I know that I have a lot to offer and I should make content and it's fun to me. But then there's like the fucking fear of being judged and everything that comes with that, right? And so I've gone through a lot of ups and downs with it. I'm at a really, really good point with it now where I can get on here, turn this on, do the thing, and then not feel like I won't listen back to it. I'm just kind of like able to just, okay, just put it out there. It is what it is.
Sure.
Something that I wanted to ask too, this is more on in your personal life, because I want to have kids someday, but like I'm kind of open to the idea that I might not, right?
Sure.
Especially with like the world we live in and everything. But I think it's really interesting. Your daughter has like the most vibrant personality,
Super
right? Like
cool,
like how old is she? 2, 3?
2.5, almost 3.
2.5.
Yeah.
She has a personality, and I feel like, especially now with like iPad kids and stuff, like it's something that I've always kind of been like that. Like ever since I can remember, I've been the same exact personality. Like I was always like hanging out with adults when I was a kid, so I had a sense of humor. I kind of understood, read between the lines, and you could just tell that she has this kind of like awareness that,
Big,
so what do you do intentionally to like, I'm sure it's something that you've intentionally worked on, right? People call something like gentle parenting or whatever. Like what things do you, I guess, have you noticed that have impacted that? Other than her being at the gym like during the day, right? Like and doing real normal things.
I mean, she can't like out of the gate. She was like that person, and it's really funny. So my friend that passed away, who I ran the business with, her name was Samantha, and we named my daughter. My wife graciously allowed me to name my daughter after my friend, and she was very much that person too.
Okay.
Like, and so there's some universal like exchange there for sure.
Yeah. You believe in reincarnation?
Yeah.
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 Of course.
For sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
I don't know if she reincarnated my daughter, but like
parts of it. Yeah.
There's something in that space, like there was some, again, like shared exchange there. But we just treat her like a person, like she's not like, we talk to her the way we talk to everybody else, and we sit and we explain things to her. And obviously like she's got a growing brain and she's learning to deal with these huge emotions. And like, again, like if I can't regulate myself, like how do I teach her to regulate herself? So like, you just kind of let them do their thing and talk to them and just kind of let her express herself in the capacity that she wants to, like they're kids, everything's learning, like everything's an experiment. Like if she wants to like touch a glass on the table, like I know it's going to break, but she doesn't know it's going to break until she breaks it. Like little stuff. You kind of just have to let them be little people and like figure it all out. Like they're just I'm still trying to figure it out. So for sure she is. And so we just treat her like, I don't want to say like people don't treat their children with respect, but we just treat her with respect, just like I would hope someone would treat me.
Empower her,
Yeah. And someone once told me too, one of my close friends, about raising their child, and like they offered their kid like no screen time in the beginning, like none, when they were first raising him, like 1, 2, 3, and they're like, it's really hard, but it goes a long way, and you see the benefit. And we like really adopted that. Like when we're at home, like we're there with her and we're talking to her and we're reading with her and we're playing her games and we're doing these things, and it's a ton of work. And like sometimes when I'm at the gym and she's there and I'm coaching and she's like, daddy, I'm like, okay, like watch YouTube for 10 minutes. Like I need to do this. Okay.
Yeah.
And like, I'll like make it okay. Like you're going to watch a safari video about lions, right? That makes it okay in my brain. but like it turns them into vegetables, dude. Like when they're on, they're like locked in. It could be any, it could be
Yeah.
a blue screen, and they could be watching the NFL. Like they don't know what it is.
Well, it turns us into vegetables.
For
right?
sure,
Like,
same, yeah. It's a distraction, right? And they just
Yeah.
look, like, no knock on anybody that has to do anything. You have to parent the way you have to parent, and that's like something I learned about being a parent is like everybody's just trying to make it through,
Yeah.
you know, and just like, yeah, like I just like I'm going to try to put that work into her. You know what I mean? Like it is a ton of work, and it is a
Yeah.
lot to have to be present, but it's this massive lesson in presence
Yeah.
with them because like they change
You're
so
learning.
fast.
I mean, shit, you're learning
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
in
And
that
if I'm not
process.
present there, if I'm teaching her not to be present, you know, like what's
Yeah.
that going to be like later in life too? I'm just going to teach her to distract herself. But I think
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, a lot of it's all her. Like she's just like a cool kid.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing is like you're just allowing her to be herself, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like it kind of correlates with being a coach, right? After going through injuries and having different things come up with myself, I noticed that I was like not trying to instill fear in everybody else. But it was
Yeah.
like, hey, here's the lift. Here's the 3 ways you're gonna get hurt. You know what I mean? Avoid doing
Right,
these 3
right,
things,
right,
and then
right.
what happens? They just do the things that I
Yeah.
said, right? So if I wouldn't have told them, would they have done that? Right? It's something that I had to really start to like face.
Right.
And so it's like the same thing with kids, right? It's like if she doesn't know the glass is gonna break, you're gonna be like, hey, be careful, the glass is gonna break, right? Now there's fear there. And
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to get like, pull away from any type of fear and focus on more empowerment of like, all right, pick it up, see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, you got it.
Yeah.
Like versus just any type of fear, but it's cool. So congrats on that. She could
Thanks.
tell that she's just like has a personality.
She's a
so I
fun
think it's
kid,
really
man.
cool.
Yeah. We're very lucky just in general. Like, you know, people can believe what they want and just, you know, we're lucky that she picked us in that space,
Yeah.
right? Like we're souls bopping around and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
that one picked us. So we're grateful for it.
Yeah. And then do you know what you're having?
We don't, we're waiting.
Okay.
We all feel boy. I had like an experience like a long time ago and I felt like I met my son and like we talked,
Yeah.
but
That's
yeah,
cool.
we don't know. We're going to wait. She feels boy. I
That's
feel
exciting.
boy. People
Yeah.
say boys, people
Yeah.
say girls, but
You guys are pretty hippie, right? So are you having a normal birth?
we tried to do a home birth last time.
Okay.
But my wife had really high blood pressure the last week, and it's just a risk out thing. Like if you bleed and you're at home, there's no blood,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we risked out last time. That's the plan this time as well.
Okay.
But my wife was like such a rock star last time and was like very malleable with it and just
Yeah.
kind of rocked with it. And she wasn't attached to like the birth plan.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to go to the hospital and everything was great. She had a beautiful birth. She still did it naturally.
Okay.
There was a midwife there. Like
Yeah.
everything was awesome, right?
Sweet.
And that's the hope this time is she can do it at home with like our daughter around and kind
Yeah.
of allow her to be a part of that process. But if it doesn't work out that way, it doesn't work out. She just wants to do it naturally and unmedicated and all
As
that
much as
stuff.
possible,
Yeah, as
yeah.
much as possible. So
Yeah. So we're gonna end it out right here, but
Yeah.
I want to ask you, I guess, what's the theme of the year? Like, what message are you trying to? So not necessarily. I mean, it could be for yourself, but also like, what do you want to focus on as a coach, or what you're putting out there, or
I just think,
anything like
like
that. This
as a
year, what's
whole,
the theme?
as a whole, like the theme of my life, but certainly like this year, like it's a continued like building or moving towards like the collective of all this stuff, like
Mhm.
all of us people, like that
Yeah.
alliance thing that I've pulled that
Yeah.
like one other time in my life before I started like the men's groups. I pulled a
Gotcha,
card and it was
yeah.
like an alliance card. It's like lean into these leverage these communities and like in general, like we're all just like searching to be a part of something
Yeah.
and like together we want to find like-minded people and like yeah, I just want to like create this like broader space that like people like the tribe mentality, like we're all looking for a
Mhm.
tribe in that space. And that's why like little gyms like this or like politics and like things
Yeah.
like that, like people feel drawn to these things because they're a part of something maybe bigger than themselves. But I just want to continue to like push that message, you know what I mean, that like the solidarity, that like the independence that's pushed on us super super early to be like outwardly away, even in the way we raise kids, like by ourselves, you know,
Yeah.
but we're meant to like raise kids with people and help and we're meant to experience each other in a broader
Yeah.
space, right? It's not just supposed to be like Chris and Tanya forever.
Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
we owe it like to the world to like experience each other in that space. And like the goal is like to talk about that stuff more like in the realm of fitness and in that
Yeah.
space and
You're
like
doing it right now.
yeah,
Exactly,
for sure,
yeah.
right? And then that's why it happened, right?
Yeah.
But that is the goal, is just to continue like to lean into like the collective nature like of all of us. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to be more like withdrawn and independent and like kind of doing our own thing. Like we've got to
Yeah.
talk about like what the thing we're doing and why it's important. And not everybody has to love it, you know, like just like the idea of like other people doing like men's groups. We kind of talked about it a little
Yeah.
bit. Like me as a gym and us as a culture, like we're not going to vibe with everybody, but if we don't talk about
Yeah.
it, the people that it does vibrate with are never going to know.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to continue to like outreach to people that like need that space in some capacity. And if they don't need that space, we can help them find the space they need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, we're not competing. Like, I'm not competing for members. I'm not competing for anything. Like, say there's 1 million people in Tucson, you know, I just
There's so many people that are not healthy.
I just
right?
want like, I'm not fighting for one, you know, I
Yeah.
just want like the 150 or the 200 or whatever the number
Or
is,
just
the 6, the one,
the
one that like,
community where somebody can't come here, they're on the side of town or whatever.
It's just like, just the one that like, you know, we're just here to like, to be like that stopping point, right? The space to like voice your hopes, and hopefully like you start to like manifest that, right? And if you don't manifest it there forever, that's okay. Like, you probably won't, but like carry it with you, right? And we just want to be like everything we need to be.
Yeah, just being present and letting. Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. I even with this podcast, it's like I only interview other fitness professionals on this one, so it's like I'm, you know, we're hyping you up the whole time, right? Like, it's like you get to plug your business or whatever's going on, and for me, it's just always been like that. I'm like I've always been the only girl on a training team. I've worked in box gyms or been the boss, and like everybody's, I think because I've worked with a lot of men, there's always been this like competitive factor. If I am in a leadership role, which I have been in every gym that I've been at, so it's always been something that really bothered me. And as a leader, I wanted to cultivate this kind of community, you know, within the trainers, because might have a really good community of clients, but like people that are actually doing it. So that's what I'm trying to do as well. It's just like, yo, there is no competition, right? Like, we're all very different. I know that you can help in ways that I can't help, and I can help in ways that you can help, and we can do stuff together, right? And so it's funny because now, as you were talking, I was thinking about the card that I pulled, and even though yours was alliance, right, and mine was reaction, I think, right? So I've had a lot of, I guess you can call them falling outs or whatever happened with different business partners or friends in the past. And so that's something that I love collaboration, but because I've had so many like times where things feel a little bit off, or could have been because of my own issues or my expectations or whatever, it's something that I notice kind of creeps up as like a trust issue sort of thing, right? So as you were talking, I was thinking the same thing of like, I think mine, even though it's always been collaboration, it's just like having better discernment of, hey, not everybody's trying to stab you in the back kind of thing, right? I try not to think like that, right? But it's like, even just, it's human, right? Like, no matter how much I'm like, like I'm going into every day with a fresh, you know, fresh slate of anything could happen and expecting the good things, there's still this like underlying.
We fall back to what we know, right? We fall back to what's familiar.
That was it was good. It kind of clicked for me. Like, like there are good people, right? Like, this is a good people can talk about good stuff and not like be competitive or try to like kind of like you know, give you like a backhanded compliment in a conversation, right? So I appreciate you for just being present and like, you know, showing up. And I'm sure like once we post this, a lot of people have a lot of different things that, you know, they want us to talk about. So I'd love to do it again whenever. And,
no, I enjoyed it. Thank you for creating the time and opening your space to
I
me.
love it. Honestly, this is like the best because it's just like I get to chill and talk to my homies.
Chop it out, dude. It's fun.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna put like all your stuff in the description so that people can follow you and stuff. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Shut this thing off. Thanks, man.
Yeah.